this can be only a form of an introductory session to get to know each other. And I'm looking forward one day to be with all of you in person, where we can spend a little longer time doing not only a discussion, we can have a two-way discussion as well as a few spiritual exercises. I owe a lot to the Society of Jesus for my formal education in St. Joseph's Boys' School. And not just that, I was so privileged to come in touch with Father Ronnie Prabhu, who was my first spiritual guru. Father Ronnie introduced me to the books of Anthony de Mello and all the methodologies of Anthony de Mello through his direct instructions to me. And that has been the foundation of my spiritual understanding. And also through his retreats, he gave me opportunities to be a teacher or one to take a few sessions, and that led me to be a spiritual retreat director on my own. And I'm grateful to Father Ronnie for all this. It was Father Ronnie also who spoke so much about the founder of your great society, St. Ignatius, and how St. Ignatius wanted everyone to be as highly trained and as highly skilled as possible. He said the more trained you are, the more skilled you are, the more you will be able to serve your community. And St. Ignatius, as I look and as this opening prayer said, to be able to discover God in everything around you. And that was his objective also. Let me do a screen share and come to my presentation. So the topic that has been given to me is the role of spirituality in fostering wellness. I will come to it a little later. My formal respects to the St. Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of your great society, to my first guru, Father Ronnie Prabhu, and to my great source of inspiration, Anthony de Mello. Anthony de Mello, through his spiritual stories, in fact, was the basis of my understanding of spirituality. Each one of you as Jesuits are based on these three vows, the vow of poverty, chastity, and obedience. And that makes you unique in a special way. One of the questions often asked to us is God the means or is God the goal? Which means for 99.9% of the world population, God is a means. That means if I am unwell or if anybody in my family is unwell, I go to God with my request, please help so-and-so to recover, please help me to recover. If I have any form of financial or any material difficulty, then I immediately go to God, and God becomes the service provider, and all the good things in the world become the goal. So for all devotees, this is an accepted norm. You and all the members of the society are one who have found that the world is no longer enchanting. Normally, people run after riches, but you have chosen poverty. Normally, people get married and have a family. You have chosen to live a life of chastity. One of the most difficult things to control yourself is your ego. We want to be in charge. But when you surrender to this law or this vow of obedience, you have given up one more important thing, that whatever my superior says is ultimate. And therefore, and I saw that in Father Ronnie, even when he had to be shifted to a hospital, he would not move until his superior was contacted and he got a sanction from him to go to hospital. And if whatever his superior said, he would do that. So these are the great things about your society. And then what happens for those of you who have given up the world and all the so-called good things in the world? God is now no longer a service provider. God is the goal. And now all the difficulties in the world now become the means. So every difficulty will turn you to God, and no longer now, because all these things what other people look for is not something that you would look for. And so in our own quest to understanding God, this is a question I ask all my fellow students is God a means or is God a goal? How long are we running after all the good things in the world? And then we get sucked into more and more worldly activity. The more you understand that we have to sometimes give up all these good things in the world and see that all the difficulties in the world will help us to discover God. Now, why are renunciates so respected? There was a certain monk who was in an extreme locality far from the town. And one day, a grihastha, a householder like us, wanted to offer his respects, and he climbs this remote hill to come to this guru who was by himself on the top of a hill. And as he was approaching, the guru, to his great surprise, comes and offers respect to a householder, a grihastha. And the man was shocked. He said, I've come to offer my respects to you. And the guru says, see, you are a greater renunciate than me. So the man did not understand. And so the monk says, see, I have given up the finite for the infinite. You have given up the infinite for the finite. And therefore, I consider your renunciation as far greater. And that is why each one of you as renunciates are really respected. Why? Because you have given up the finite in the search for the infinite. Now, this is the topic that I come to. What is the role of spirituality in fostering wellness? Let us look into the word wellness. What does wellness mean? Wellness can be in my body or in my mind. Now, if you look at body and mind, which is more we need to focus? Is it my bodily wellness I'm looking at, or is it my mental wellness? One thing is very clear. Even if my body is not okay, but if my mind is okay, I'm still okay. But on the other hand, I may have everything good in the world, and if my mind is not okay, I am not okay. So really, we will shift from the focus of body to the mind, and I will look at wellness, mental wellness. Now, mental wellness can come in many ways. You will see whenever a person enters into a bar or a pub, and the moment they're opening a bottle of a liquor or a drink or some sort, you will see there is tremendous amount of wellness. So there are wellness can come mentally through various means. It could come through alcohol or drugs. Now, we are not looking at that. We are looking at spirituality. How is that spirituality can give us a consistent sense of mental well-being? And that is the topic today. Now, again, if I have to discuss what is spirituality, I have to go by what Father Anthony de Mello said. Spirituality is waking up. Before that, my whole talk will be focusing only on the mind, how to achieve a kind of a mind mastery. Now, all of us, especially the audience that I'm speaking to, have been trained or are being trained into the field of spirituality. So about that, I will give less of an importance. I will only give you the idea of the mind. And each of you are teachers in your own way. And some of these can help you to help people who seek guidance about the mind and to be able to see where are the mental blocks. The theme is mental wellness. And mental wellness, the answer will be through spirituality. About spirituality, I will touch little or nothing because that is your area. I will not dwell into that. I will touch on understanding the human mind to see where do we get problems and where does the mind become very restless or upset. The first question is, let us make a diagnosis now about where is the problem. The first question we need to ask about myself is, can persons or situations make me very angry and upset? The answer, of course, is yes. Do we tend to repeat the same mistake again and again? If you look into our own lives, you will see we may not do many mistakes. But our mind is programmed in such a way, like there is a bug in the software of our life. We may not do many mistakes, but we tend to repeat the same mistake again and again. And that is why part of mental mastery is to find out, how did that bug enter? And is it possible for me to reprogram my mental programming so that I may not be able to repeat the same mistake again and again? Do we procrastinate? That means if there is something that I can do today, is there a feeling that, I'm not feeling well enough to start? And this is an important mind block. If a person has to achieve something, you should have that sense of mind mastery, that what can be done today has to be done today. The next question is, do we feel at any time, why is God a little unkind to me? Why others seem to be more blessed? Now, this is, I won't say universal, but this is a large feeling of a lot of people. Just like the grass is greener on the other side, you always feel others are more lucky. But this is a very, very unfortunate thought to entertain, because whatever you unconsciously believe, that becomes true. If I think I'm fully blessed, you are fully blessed. If you think God is not fair to me, life will prove that to you. And part of mind mastery is to be able to see these programs that are working in the background of our minds and see how we can reprogram ourselves. Continuing this, does past trauma still affect you? There is something called a wounded child syndrome. Now, many of us have gone through vulnerable phases in our life and we were dependent on others. And at those moments when somebody gave a very angry word, maybe through their own upset, not sensitive to the little child within us. And sometimes we believe that as true when somebody says, you are useless, you're good for nothing. Now, sometimes the child begins to think that is true. And sometimes past trauma, most often mental, sometimes physical, rarely, or sometimes sexual also, can torment many of the minds, even when they become adults. So that is why, I may not be responsible for what has happened during my childhood or whenever I'm vulnerable. But we need to tell ourselves and I'll tell others that now as an adult, I need to heal that wounded child, to be able to reprogram my mind, to be able to forgive that person who has hurt me. And thereby, through forgiveness, I'm able to heal my mind and allow my mind to go ahead. The mind should not have this baggage of the past. Do you sometimes feel sad for no reason? This is very, 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 very common. Now, what is this? It is, after all, the mind has got mood changes. And one of the mood changes is a form of depression. Depression is universal. It is said everyone goes through a feeling of depression at some time, not for any reason. There may be no reason at all. You may have all the good things in the world, and suddenly a person may feel low for no reason. And in those moments, you could be a little irritable and offend people also, because people may not be sensitive to a state of feeling low in your mind. So now this is something that if the mind is sick for some reason, if the mind has gone into a state of depression, now I have to use my mind to work on my mind. That it becomes difficult. So therefore, whenever there is a feeling of depression, I have no solution. I would like, when we are going through that, to accept it, not to fight with it, and allow that feeling of depression to go away on its own, because you cannot force it out of your system, because this is a problem of the instrument. See, my mind is my instrument with which I interact with the world. And if my instrument is defective, it's like my car or my computer is not working. And when that happens, then I'm not able to function. And that is another problem. Do you feel insecure about the future? The word fear is an acronym. It can be taken as an acronym. And what is the acronym? Fantasized experiences appearing real. Nothing has happened on the ground, but my mind is able to fantasize, think of the worst, suffer the worst. That is why Mark Twain has said, I've had a lot of problems in my life. Some of them actually happened, because most of our problems are there in our mind. Let me tell you about hurt and upsets. Whenever the mind goes through a hurt and upset, this is something that we can help ourselves through a kind of a self-hypnosis or a self-declaration where we repeat this again and again. And I will say this because I would request you to repeat after me. All of you are muted, so please repeat after me. Hurt or upset, whether justified or not, is always self-damaging. I want you to register these words. hurt and upset, or hurt or upset, whether justified or not, is always self-damaging. So one of the things I really like to work on is healing a wounded mind. The Bhagavad Gita, which has been a source book for me, which has been the scriptural basis of my own understanding of spirituality, right in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, one of the initial teaching verses of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is an example of a person, of a worldly person in the battlefield of life, with all the skills and all the abilities, but at the moment when he is to function, just like a person comes up to make a public speech and he's so frozen, he's not able to speak. That's exactly what happened to Arjuna. He had all the abilities, and Shri Krishna wants to give the best for the opening talk. And he uses this word in Sanskrit. I will use the Sanskrit word because I love this phrase. Matra sparshasu kaunteya sitoshna sukha dukkadaya agama pahino anityaha tam stitikshasva Bharata. O Bharata, O Arjuna, whenever you interact with the world, matra sparshasi. Sparsha is my sense organs. When the sense organs interact with the world outside you, Sita Ushna Sukha Dukkhaya, you will experience hot and cold, you will experience happiness and sorrow. But remember one thing, all of these are temporary. They come and they go. And for anything temporary, don't take them too seriously. Tam stitikshasva Bharata. O Bharata, O Arjuna, the only solution I can offer to you is to be mentally strong. If you can train yourself to be mentally strong, you are a physically strong person. Now you need to be mentally strong. And that word is called titiksha. Herman Hesse has written this book. I would recommend, I'm sure it will be there in your library, the book called Siddhartha. I'm sure you can Google this and you will get a PDF free version of this. One of the things that Herman Hesse, who got a Nobel Prize possibly for this book itself, the main character is called Siddhartha, a fictitious character. But one of the things Siddhartha demonstrates is mental toughness. If you want to accomplish anything in the world, you have to be mentally strong. So I will come to, this is a symbolic picture. I cannot show our mind, but I can show you a model of the brain. And then to ask, am I the boss of my mind, or is my mind bossing over me? If you see that questionnaire that we went through, you will see in all these situations, the mind determines my state of being. Now, I know there is an unpleasant situation. I know there is an unpleasant person, but can I have such a mastery over mind that that person or the situation shall not affect me? And I will give you a personal inventory called FIR. Now, what is this FIR? F stands for frequency. How frequently I get very angry, very upset, and I lose my equipoise, let me say. So F stands for frequency. How frequently I get angry or upset. I stands for intensity. How intense is my upset? And the intensity can be subclassified into level 1, mental. You may be watching me, I may be upset, but I can mask a mental upset. Level 2 is verbal. When the intensity is more, you have never seen an angry person speaking softly, have you? The moment you are angry, the volume, the tone, the pitch of your voice changes, and you can immediately make out somebody is upset. And the third is, as in this illustration, when a person is really upset, you will see in the body. Now, this is a personal inventory to see how frequently I get upset, how intense is my upset. And the next question is, if there is a personal mastery, what is our recovery? If I have spiritual inputs, if I am mentally very stable, I may go through upsetting situations. I do get upset, but then I don't get so upset. The moment I become aware, my upset level will come down from the body to the verbal to the mental. My recovery, which used to take a long time, now takes a shorter time. And the pinnacle or the index of your spiritual growth is when there is an upsetting situation and you have been given that news which is very upsetting, Your first reaction is what? And slowly you will be able to say, so what? I will be able to handle it. How frequently? Frequency, intensity classified into 3, and R being recovery. All right, now we will go into certain answers, and this is another teacher that I have great respect for. If one of the teachers I think is of the greatest mind in India is Gautama Buddha. Perhaps the greatest mind in China is Lao Tzu. And Lao Tzu has given us one solution, not one solution, many solutions. I will recommend a book where you can give the analects of Lao Tzu. Now, for example, if a person is caught in the trap of procrastination, and this is quoted from him, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And if I'm caught up with procrastination, Lao Tzu has this answer: begin and the work will be done. Begin. Take that initial step to go through. And all these analects of Lao Tzu, it is said, one of the analects, he says, those who know do not speak, and those who speak do not know. And that is why he was a jnani, a great man. He would never speak, he would never teach. But the king of China was very insistent that he write something. He forced him. He didn't allow him to leave the country. And these analects are available, which it's available in a modern form, Bain Dyer, and it is in a form of a book called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. I will certainly recommend this book in your library. Please get this. And many of these analects of Lao Tzu itself are great. And Bain Dyer has brought them in a way that we can understand. Part of mind mastery is to break your mind to understand, because when you don't know the mind, how do we become the mastery of your mind? And let me tell you how Gautama Buddha helps you to understand mind mastery. Now, this is something I want all of us to remember. He says this: watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. Watch your character, for it becomes your destiny. And then he gives a landmark statement: if I have the mental capacity to be able to change those thoughts, for example, if I think I'm very unlucky, to think I'm very lucky. If I'm able to change those thoughts, if I think I'm useless, good for nothing, to change your thoughts to be, I am a gift to the universe. I'm here to make a difference to the world in my own special way, which no one else can do. Now, in your own way, if I'm able to change my own thoughts, and those thoughts will become words, it will become action, it becomes habit, it becomes character. And therefore, we need to work on those central ideas that are in our mind, thanks to Gautama Buddha. How do we understand fear? Now, fear, as I already said, is fantasized experiences appearing real. Most of these are fantasies. The more I do not address my fear can become a Frankenstein, and I allow it to become very big. Just like the fear of public speaking is just to go and speak, address it, and address your fears. The more I withdraw from it, the more I give power to it. Now, if you see children in a doctor's clinic, do they cry more before the injection or after the injection? You will see the anticipation of pain can be more painful than the pain itself. And that is where mental mastery comes in, because whenever we hear bad news, the mind begins to think of the worst. But we need to be able to see in our own life, and that's why a little later I will say, our whole spiritual exercises will be to come to that level to be able to say yes to whatever God is going to subject me to. And if my yes can be very, very strong, then there is the fear. Part of our mental evolution is all of us have had some form of a mental abuse when people have told you you're not okay. And that can become a program. And that is why, look at these words. If you compare yourself with others, you may become vain and bitter. And part of mental reprogram is to tell ourselves, and I wish you could repeat it after me, no one is superior to me. No one is inferior to me. I am what I am. Tell yourself, no one is superior to me. No one is inferior to me. I am what I am. There is no one as unique as I am. And the more I accept myself, there is less of resistance. And I don't complain, why God has made me different, why God has not blessed me like the way he has blessed others. I will conclude with a few examples, which I like very much. One is a story from Akbar and Birbal. Akbar means great. And the greatness of Akbar was that he was, although he didn't have much education himself, he was able to interact by learning from all the wise people. He had the Navaratnas, and among the Navaratnas was this person, Birbal. And because Akbar was always considered, you are great, one of the things, a thought occurs to him. And he says, God is great, I'm also great. But is there some way that I can be greater than God? Birbal said, yes, my lord, there is a way in which you can be greater than God. And Akbar was very curious to know how and in what way I can be greater than God. And Birbal asks him, do you have the power to banish anybody from your kingdom? He says, yes, I can banish anybody from my kingdom. I have that powers to do so. And Birbal asks him, can God banish anybody from his kingdom? You will see the whole world is the kingdom of God. One thing God can never do is banish anybody from his kingdom. The question to each one of us is, I'm using this whole example is, can you banish from your mind someone you hate and dislike? Is someone who has hurt you, who has wounded you, you will see they are in my mind and in my heart much more closer. I may forget all the people who have done good things to me, but those people who have hurt me, who have wounded me, we tend to nurture them in our hearts because we are not able to forgive, we are not able to forget. And therefore, true mental mastery is the ability to be able to forgive. You may not forget, but certainly to be able to forgive. And that's where spirituality makes us so big. And when you become big, all the issues around become small. And it is possible that the bigness in me to forgive that person who has hurt me or wounded me, because the moment I forgive, there is a lot of healing energy in my heart. And then I no longer entertain that negative person. The closer, that is why they say you become more like your enemies than your friends. Because your enemies, because I want to get one step over them, I learn about their ways. And that is why, like the bad policeman, all the time focused on a convict and the methodology of convicts, a police person can become a bigger convict potentially than a convict himself, because he knows the ways and means of that kind of people. So that is why let us not entertain those negative people and look at our input from spirituality to be able to heal. A few examples. Can you see the couple sitting on a roller coaster? The man seems to be enjoying himself. The woman has an expression, never again I'm going to sit on it. What does this mean? The situation is the same, but the way I relate to it, and that is where all our spiritual inputs come, that it is my mental attitude which creates the altitude. So the advisors avoid negative, pessimistic, and superstitious attitudes, such as, I'm always unlucky, I must have done something wrong, life is not fair. Now these thoughts pull us down, and this is what we need to work on mentally. This is one of the largest concentration death camps, the Nazi concentration camps in Austria, and many of them in cold were bundled up like this. Among them was Viktor Frankl. And Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist. He observed all these people. And one thing he observed, that those who had a stronger mental frame of mind were able to handle all this much better than those who were physically strong. And all this comes in another book, again, a book for your personal library, Man's Search for Meaning, where a book which will help us to understand. He laid a new school of psychotherapy called logotherapy. Logotherapy means to help us to discover our own mind and to see how our mind will function. Now, here is a lady, if you can see what she's going through. And I want you to imagine what is her real problem. This is another very common problem when I feel lonely. The great teacher J. Krishnamurti had introduced two terms about what is called loneliness and aloneness. Loneliness he defines as when he or she is not there in my life, I feel something is missing, something is empty. What is aloneness? Aloneness is all one. Once you discover fulfillment in yourself, in the introduction, in the introductory prayer, it was said that God is everywhere and God is antaryami. God is an indweller in me. The more I discover that indweller in me, I may be alone, but now I discover I am all one. I am full. And now if others are there, good. If nobody is there, I celebrate myself. I'm complete just the way I am. Ultimately, all our spiritual inputs have to come in touch with the problem of death, of losing somebody you love, and also to be able to accept your own death. Now, in Mount St. Joseph's, just opposite Prerna, is the cemetery of all the earlier fathers. And it's very, very inspirational personally for me. In the recent last retreat, when I was there, very close to Father Ronnie's grave. Now, each of these, the more closer you come to death, and the more you learn to accept death, you will see death is not something that we need to fight. And you will experience the greatness of life in contrast with death. This is another book which says, I'm okay, you're okay. But what is the reality? Neither I am okay, but I know about my limitations and I know about the limitations of people around me. So what do? I'm not okay, you are not okay, that is okay. Through mind mastery, whatever by means, it means through spiritual means, if I'm able to come to that level to be able to say, I'm not okay, you're also not okay, well, that's okay. That means I accept my... We have recently come from some spiritual locations on the border of China. These are called the Char Dhams, where the Ganga originates, the Yamuna originates, and all these are from various glaciers in the Himalayas, a temple called Kedarnath and Badrinath. As we were there, the weather was so bad. We saw ice and snow everywhere, and we experienced what is the sub-freezing temperatures. And we had all the comforts of good rooms, but we could see so many devotees who were bearing with limited protection such adverse weather. And it is their power of faith that kept them going. I saw two Digambara Jain saints. They were walking barefoot. They did not even have one cloth on their body in sub-freezing temperature. They were holding a fan. And, you know, if people were able to handle such freezing temperatures, Chicago is a country, Chicago is a town, a city on the Lake Michigan. And during winter, when the weather is so bad, for example, on a day when these temperatures drop, the question is, will life go on or it will not go on? In all these developed countries, because winter is something they anticipate, they are prepared for winter. Schedules may be delayed, but life will go on. Why? Because they are prepared for winter. Our whole spiritual exercises is to be able to come to those winter. Winter is when the weather around me, maybe in my mind, is adverse, when my mind is not feeling okay. But how will I be able to master even those situations? Now, if I can sum up a few points, how I can move from a breakdown to a breakthrough is, this is from Father Ronnie, to always remind yourself how lucky I am. The more you are grateful, you know, you have the attitude of gratitude, that will help you. You can never be grateful and miserable at the same time. This is again from Anthony de Mello. The next is, if I find myself so blessed, how I can make the most of my life, how I can discover meaning and purpose even in adversities. Finally, we are all in the theme of prayer, and we know the importance of prayer as part of mental well-being. I may not make any special requests, but it is just being in that attitude of surrender. Through bhajans, through music, the mind becomes a tremendous sense of well-being, and that is exactly what we feel. So whenever you are in a prayerful mode, and especially if there is an appropriate music also, it brings about a lot of well-being. I've had 2 opportunities to visit this Holy Land, where you see the Western Wall, very holy for the Jews. That golden dome is the Al-Aqsa Mosque, where Muhammad, for the Muslims, after Mecca and Medina, this is the most holy place. And the steeple on the extreme left is the point where Jesus was crucified in Jerusalem. So in this one place, you will see all the 3 religions, the holiest places of all of them. And as I was there and I had to speak at that meeting, I had to share something what I thought was the greatest prayer. Before that, let me tell you about another prayer from Tagore, and I'm going to conclude in a few minutes. Let me not pray to be sheltered from dangers, but to be fearless in facing them. Let me not beg for the stilling of my pain, but for the heart to conquer it. Let me not look for allies in life's battlefield, but to my own strength. Grant that I may not be a coward feeling your mercy in my successes alone, but let me find the grasp of my hand, find the grasp of your hand in my failure. So beautiful that if in my failure, in my setbacks, in my difficulties, instead of complaining, if I can see this as part of the will of the Lord. And true acceptance is the Islamic prayer of Inshallah, or what in the prayer of Jesus, thy will be done. So what is the greatest prayer? There's a little story from Anthony de Mello in the Song of the Bird. I will share that when we are coming into the point of discussion, which I think is the greatest prayer of all. But this is Dag Hammarskjöld, a Swedish economist, Nobel Prize winner, Secretary General of the United Nations, and a source of inspiration for the United States President, then John F. Kennedy. And this is my concluding words, and I will think this is one of the greatest prayers of all time. For all that has been, thank you. And for all that shall be, yes. Thank you very much.